as the world seemingly falls apart, and as children only look to music for 30 seconds at a time, one man, one band stand in the way. Smashing Pumpkins return and feed the fans like nobody else on this planet right now. It is a banquet, my man. A banquet of music. I can't thank you enough for this.
Where have you been my whole life, Sane Love?
We are here, Billy Corgan, to talk about this remarkable new album and the journey you've been on to make it. I'm really thrilled to dive into it. It is called CYR. And I joked at the start about there being a lot of music, and I think the idea of creating something that has structure, that allows us to lose ourselves in music as a body of work isn't the obvious place that artists go now. And yet you find yourself going deep, deep, deep on this record. What prompted you to put out a body of work that is this kind of elaborate and this wide? What is the thing in you that makes you go, I'm going all in on this?
Well, I've been beating the drum for a few years that the band, if the band has a future, it's as a creative unit, not as a touring greatest hits thing. You know, you reach this point in the music business where everyone kind of starts edging you towards the wall because it's just a lot easier. And I literally have to have these discussions where I try to tell people, you don't understand. The real energy in this band is in creativity. If you can get that right, you'll get everything else you want on the other side of the wall, including big tours, like the Melancholy
big
stuff.
Hits. You'll get it all.
You'll get it all. But this band works a particular way, and you just have to let it happen. And I found there was a certain amount of resistance to that because of the amount of work that was necessary. So yeah, I just said, well, I'm not asking for permission. I'm just going to go ahead and do this. And the 20 songs was the end result of like going super deep and just sort of trying to evolve what we were capable of doing in the 21st century, and understanding that part of that was not relying on familiar things, like had to kind of crack the code and find a new language, which I'd done before. So it's not like I didn't do it on a DAW or Machina. And the only way I know how to do that is work for about a year on something, like over and over again, until I kind of figure something out that can only be figured out with repetition and stupidity or something. It just takes time.
I'm glad you said that, because when I listen to this album, there's so much of it that is actually overwhelming, which is a great thing, because I realize now I have this opportunity to go there. And I now have the time. Because you took the time to make it, I have the time to unpack it and work it all out. Just going through the lyrics, and we'll talk about words in a minute, so important to this experience. There's a lot in there. But I think the first thing that fans recognized when you returned was that you were once again dancing and moving in a unique sonic landscape. That it was like, you know what, this is the sound I hear to go along with the feeling, which goes along with the words. And I guess the question is, what came first this time? Was it the writing? Was it the feeling? Was it the listening and going, you know what, I love that synth? Like, where did it begin for you to get there to the sonic space?
When you're young and you don't have anything to lose, you make very simple binary choices. Riff A is more exciting than riff B. Okay. When you've done something for 30 years, like anybody else, you assume that whatever comes out of your mouth or whatever you play has a certain kind of, unique quality because it's been proven by the marketplace. Like, you're still there, right? But if you go back to your 20-year-old self, your 20-year-old self doesn't care about any of that. Your 20-year-old self only goes, riff A is more exciting than riff B. So I would have a riff. The single CYR is a perfect example. It was originally a guitar riff, like a heavy, and we started with the heavy guitar riff. And somewhere along the way we said, well, let's try it this other way to see if there's something there. So got a big fat synth going, da, 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 and we looked at each other and go, well, that's more exciting.
That's your A and B.
That's it. So then it just becomes a series of binary choices. There isn't a devil sitting on your shoulder going, yeah, but the Smashing Pumpkins fans, they expect to hear that guitar now. Don't you forget. You go back to the primal space of binary choices. If somebody's not a musician listening to this, it's as simple as like, if you've ever had feelings for two people, you have to make a decision because it's unfair to the one person. And if you're really in love with the other, you got to kind of make a move. Well, that's kind of what it's like. You have to kind of go where your heart tells you to go. And so on an album like this, I just went where my heart told me to go. There was nobody sort of standing there saying you can't do that because, and by the way, I like to point out for the naysayer crowd, I have done a lot of rock music. You and I have interviewed about some of the rock music I've done over the last 7 years. I don't remember any mountains moving. I don't remember anything super magical happening. Yeah, the albums were well received generally. People like them. But nothing magical was happening. And at some point, I'm a wizard. I go, wait, I still got lightning bolts in the hands. I can still do this. But how did I do it before? Oh, I just made binary choices. I just made really simple binary choices. A or B, A or B. And you do that over the course of a year, and you kind of get used to it. You forget that you're supposed to hook up the fuzz pedal or whatever. You just get into a groove of like, oh, this sounds good. And then you do stuff like you invite people in. For example, my management team, who I think you know a little bit personally, one of them is Mark Wakefield, who was the original member of Linkin Park. I mean, these are not, and Bino, my manager, started with System of a Down in a garage. These are people who are real music people. I didn't let them hear the record until it was probably 90% done.
Wow.
And I kept telling them, look, you're either going to love this thing or you're going to hate it. Like there's no, same thing, binary choice. I know there's going to be no middle ground here. And if you hate it, too bad because it's too late. They came in and, they're excited. Okay, play it. First song, they turned around, they looked at me, they were like this. It was shocking to them what they were hearing. You know what I mean? The good version of shocking.
We spoke a couple of months ago and I was in a similar state, and I think I made some kind of, I slapped something together about the fact that it felt like you'd finally caught up to yourselves, and that idea of shocking us as fans based on what you're capable of as a very linear rock and roll band that can take us off into space, that shock is less shocking. Because you have continued to shapeshift over time. And one of the things I think that really is interesting about this album, and this is, I'm going to nerd out and get all my nerdery out of the way so we can dive into the human thing in a minute. But the synth part of this record, right? It's undeniably anchored down by these really beautiful analog sounding synths and washers and pads. You've somehow maintained the naivety of that. Let me qualify that. Why the 80s is such an important decade for pop music is because every number one song was so weird and so strange and so discordant, and all the things that fit together just weren't supposed to fit together. And that's because people were learning how to use synths. They were like, well, that sounds cool. I don't know what it's supposed to do with the live bass and the drums and my voice and all that shit. So I just put it in there, and next thing you know, you got Flock of Seagulls and Psychedelic Furs and Simple Minds. By the way, New Gold Dream is one of the weirdest sounding albums of all time, and they were an arena band on that. So it's like, I hear elements of all that, but not because you're cherry picking it, because it's the naivety of analog synths. You've somehow been able to recapture that. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, because I don't know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? I don't know what I'm doing, but I didn't know what I was doing on the guitar either.
When? Because in my mind, you were born with a guitar.
No, I appreciate that, but I was talking to my partner the other day because The Cure is her all-time favorite band, and when I learned how to play guitar when I was 15, 16, I started playing in that style that people would kind of more identify as the Cure style, but it was my style. But I never heard The Cure. So the first time I heard The Cure when I was 17 years old, I was like, oh, this guy plays like me. It was born of a sort of a primitive desire to play a certain way. Well, it's the same thing with me with any technology. I actually don't want to know what I'm doing. I've gone in there with beat makers and stuff, and they flange the conga, and it just doesn't work for me. The musician in me is like, where's the excitement? You know what I mean? The greatest rock and roll bands really didn't know what they were doing. And there's in essence, the discovery becomes part of what intrigues the listener. They hear you stumbling into places you don't belong. So it's that simple. I really don't know what I'm doing. I could afford to hire people who know what they're doing, and I have at different times. But I work with Bon Harris, who founding member of Knights or Ebb. He did a lot of the electronics on Adore. I mean, Bon is not a savant with technology, but the guy understands a groove like nobody's business. So he would bring that understanding to like a primitive sort of approach, and he taught me that same primitive approach. So, It's as simple as this. It's like, does this sound better? Does this sound better? Okay, good. Let's go. Keep moving.
Yeah, it's really good. And when you listen to it in the context of this record, you have really anchored it into what is otherwise some very tight playing. What's amazing is hearing someone like Jimmy, who I know when you let him out, and he just like, no one plays like him. But he's so incredibly restrained is the wrong word. Focused is the word I would use on this record. Focused on the structure, on achieving his role within the song. Whereas there's been times even in songs you've recorded, not even played live, let alone live, where he's just spiraled off and somehow you've just caught up to him. And in this record, it just feels like he's in a different space. How did you kind of bring everybody into a place where they understood what their role was on this record? Because it's in the musician's nature to express themselves freely.
Jimmy's thing is always songs number one. So Jimmy's always like, just kind of tell me what you're after and I'll try to give it to you. And I think the greatest compliment I could give Jimmy is he's one of the supreme drummers in the world. And he's totally fine with relegating his ability if it's better for the song. So it's as simple as that. I mean, there's no weirdness at all. It's just kind of point me down the road you want to go down. But what's interesting is people listen to the record, they start to hear this other layer of rhythmic subtlety that's in there. You know what I mean? Like their first reaction is like, wait, where's all the strum and drang? But then they listen to it, they start to hear the personalities kind of in there. So it's cool. I think people understand it when they hear it.
What connects song 1 and song 20? And I asked, you couldn't tell me?
I couldn't tell you.
Because I'm obsessed with the idea, especially when you give me 20 songs in a time where one song really just exists at a time. The idea of track listing and the idea of a cadence of why, and I just can't believe that you get to the end and you're like, well, the last one I've left is 20, so that'll be 20. There has to be some flow to it.
I think we live in a disassociative world. And I think in the 20 songs, there's a greater representation of the disassociation. We live in a world now where nothing begins and nothing ends. And in a weird kind of way, nobody dies. I mean, they're already talking, Elon Musk and them, they're already talking about neural implants and your personality can live after time. And then there was the Kardashian thing where they brought the dad back with the hologram.
You can clone your dog.
Right. So we're kind of right on the edge of kind of living forever. So does an album really begin or end anymore? Does it, is there really a beginning and ending? Is it's a constant dissociative state. My partner and I watched Westworld. I don't know if you've seen that series.
Oh yeah.
I'm not. I don't want to put anybody down. I'm not a big fan of what they've done to the show, but there's a certain ambience that they capture in the show. There's a certain ambience in the show that they capture that's sort of disassociative. Like basically the modern world that we're entering into is half virtual, half literal. And then you get into the robotics end, which is a whole other thing of like how we'll interact with AI and robotics. But this idea that modern life is this kind of weird, is it real, is it not real? And it's hard to, and who do you ask to even tell you what that is anymore, right? So I think the album in its own 20-song way sort of represents this level of disassociation. I never would have sequenced an album like this 20 years ago because I would really have thought of it as like there's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. To me, this is just like, it's like some sort of big informational soup and dive in any point you want and come out the other side. And I'm the last person to tell you what your entry point is and what your out is. Because I'm meeting 20-year-olds who are super into Siamese Dream, and then I'm meeting other 20-year-olds who said, I don't even know your 90s work. I only listen to the stuff from the last few years.
Do you ever pinch yourself? Do you ever go, is this actually real? Am I really here?
Well, there's a lot of talk recently about are we living in a simulation? And even with what's going on with the election, it seems to be a continuance of that thought. Yeah, I don't know. I go back to the Morrissey line, God's got a sixth sense of humor or something, Like I'm not really sure.
If you woke up in a different state, perhaps in more of a cerebral state in your physical, and you were just detached to self, let's put it base, in a Matrix scenario, would you be at all shocked?
But you're talking to somebody who has dreams that are real. I had a dream the other morning. I go through periods where I'll dream for months at a time, like I'm meaning like in blocks of time. And I'll have like 2-hour dreams almost every morning before I wake up. And they're like full movies, they're full scenarios, and sometimes I visit the same places again with the same characters. And the other morning I was having a dream where I was completely convinced it was real. Everything was colorful, tactile, all the rules of gravity applied. And I remember thinking in the middle of the dream, wait, this is a dream. This isn't real. And there's in the Carlos Castaneda's books, if anybody's ever read them, Don Juan tells the main character, because no one ever knows if these books are fictional or real, but he tells the main character, if you're in a dream and you want to control the dream, look at your hands. So I remember this in the dream, because I was like, okay, if this is a dream, let me see if it's a dream. So I'm going to look at my hands. And every time I would look at my hands, they would phase, like they would glitch, like in a video game. And I put my hands back down and I'd look again and they would glitch. And that's about the time I woke up.
How do you feel when you wake up from that?
Well, this is the thing. What is the difference between having a dream where things happen? And I mean, I've had dreams where I hug people and they feel physically real. Like I have the same sensation as if I walked up and hugged you. So you tell me what's real. I'm not the person to say. The one thing I do know from all my spiritual musings over the years is that the most important thing in life is to be as much into the moment as you can be. That seems to be the thing that balances all concepts out. Like, if you get super into the moment you're in, you can both accept that it's possibly a dream, but you can also accept that you're fully in the body and you're having this reality to its utmost. That seems to balance two ideas. The disassociative nature, which online culture promulgates, is no, you don't have to be in the body. You can just kind of be here in a kind of a virtual thing, and nobody ever dies. And you can, you die in the video game, you just hit the button, you start over again.
The Billy that I'm talking to now, who has worked out that honesty and transparency and trying to find a way through a conversation as a learning exercise as much as it is a sharing or promotional exercise, at least that's what I'm getting out of every conversation I'm having with you lately, is just someone who's kind of cracked how to do it, right? It's the same desire, but you've worked out, you're getting really good at it. The Billy who first came out in the early 90s, I think you were trying to do that still. You were always honest, but you were honest, and this, what you said before reminded me of that. I remember reading articles with you in Spin Magazine. You talk openly about, well, if it all goes pear-shaped, I'll just kill myself. And it was almost glib, and it was like humorous, yada, but that became the headline. And then it becomes like, you're so successful, but you talk about wanting to kill yourself. Those things don't equally match up, What's wrong with you? You should be happy. And then it becomes this thing, right? And that's kind of what I feel it ended up being for a while. There was just like, why are you complaining? And it's just so off. It's not a competition, it's a life. It's like what you go through is real, right?
Yeah, but I do think that I had to learn a valuable thing in that. And I grew up, lower middle class, and you have to remember that if you've been lucky, as you and I've been lucky, you always have to have one eye on the fact that 99% of people will never have the opportunities that we've had. So if you don't kind of lead with, hey man, I'm the luckiest guy in the world and I feel blessed to be here, and then here's my sort of rap, the rap becomes a thing that almost makes people feel bad. Like it ends up almost insulting them. And that's something I had to learn. Like in essence, both things can be true. I can complain about my stupid rock star problems, while at the same time respecting that somebody who grew up like I did, or worse, which is many people, have a hard go, and they may not have the same opportunities that I had, and I have to have a little bit of balance and appreciation.
Self-awareness, basically.
You become a bit tone deaf, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're in your $3,000 coat driving your $150,000 car, and you're complaining about how the record company dropped your record.
You can justify that by creating character, and it was interesting watching your interview recently, your conversation with my friend and yours, Dan P. Carter, where you really were very sort of open about the character versus the human, and like, hey, check it out, it's more Bowie than you think. It's like I'm William Patrick Corgan, but at the same time, Billy's always been to some degree a character throughout this music, and I guess I was too lost in it because of what it meant to me as a fan and what I got out of the music to see that. But in a way, I guess that protected you at the height of that, right? In some respects, that allowed you to detach yourself from all of that stuff we just talked about.
Yeah, I created a kind of a living avatar, and like a method actor, I would go so deeply into it that I would talk that way and think that way. And then one day I would wake up and it would be over and I would move on to another character. It was certainly inspired by people like Bowie or Iggy Pop or, the guys in Bauhaus or whatever. I just kind of took liberally from what I want. I mean, look, Robert Smith plays a character. Now, he's been Robert Smith for so long that he is that guy. But you're also talking to somebody who played tabletop tennis against Robert, and he told me at one point him and his sister had won the championship for their area in England at, ping pong, And I'm like, and he killed me at ping pong, 24-1 kind of thing, you know what I mean? Or whatever, 21-0.
No, you got one. You got one. You can claim one.
I got one, yeah.
I got 1 point against Damon Albarn, who is like an assassin. And I got 1 point against him, and I've never seen him so angry.
There's nothing worse than a ping pong assassin. Honestly, there's nothing worse. I've played against two in my life, Robert Smith and Claus Mine of the Scorpions, both complete ping pong assassins. And by the way, preening, gloating, peacocking, like not just enough to beat you. You kind of got to do that.
Yeah. No, when I got that point against Damon, he like threw the bat and was just like game over. I don't want to play anymore. It was like 18-1. He went in and just he took 2 seconds to beat me the other 3 points. He was so angry. He just couldn't even get his head around the fact that I won a point. I was like,
yeah,
man, it's crazy. It's funny you talk about Robert Smith being that, because someone said to me a few years ago now, because we were talking about the cult of Robert Smith and the idea of Robert Smith being Robert Smith all the time, and they were someone said to me, Robert Smith still gets out of the shower, And if you imagine Robert Smith with that hair just down here with a towel around him, just putting on deodorant like the rest of us, the whole thing is shattered.
My generation was everyone puts their pants on one leg at a time. That was the saying from the 50s or 40s or whatever.
Right.
So I used these characters to kind of create distance, and then over time it kind of became like a game of chicken with journalists. How far could they push me and how far could I push them?
But wasn't that exhausting?
No, it was quite amusing as long as you were selling records. You know what I mean?
But it detached you from. Well, you made this music that was so beautiful and emotional and personal and drew us into your world whilst also really enhancing ours. Then everyone wants to get to know you, and you're like, you don't get to know me. You get to know Billy. But then it's like, okay, I'm a character now. It's almost Bill Hicksish. It's almost Andy Kaufman-esque.
Oh.
Yeah, but I don't like Billy. Billy's being a to me right now. He's not being forthcoming in this interview, or he's doing this, or he's doing that. And to you, that's really funny. But eventually, it becomes. I wonder where does it end? Like William's probably going home and going, maybe I pushed that interview a little bit too far. It was funny to me. But all they think is Billy's not the guy I want to hang out with.
Well, greatest troll quote I ever saw on me was where somebody wrote, I don't like Billy, but I like his music. I mean, think about that. It's
yeah.
Huh? There's in my mind, there's no separation.
You kind of separated it though, because I just can't believe that you wrote a song like Soma, or a song like oh God, any of the songs on Melancholy, Stand Inside Your Love. I can't imagine you wrote a song that is about as pure a paean to love as Billy the character. That's William, isn't it?
Well, it's a bit of both, but more William, yeah. But here's the thing. The other overlay was identifying, which now it's very obvious. By the way, I've been in the media for 30 years.
Yeah.
When I figured out circa 1991 that the media was totally full of shit and was agenda driven, I was shocked. It was like a Wizard of Oz moment. What do you mean? I thought this was a world of equity and fairness, not a world of agenda, right? So that engendered in me this other thing that is the third person in the room, which is, I'm gonna turn this thing upside down. I'm gonna use their energy like Olay, like a matador.
Yeah.
I know they're gonna come at me, and I'm gonna Olay them and just build up the energy. And again, it works very well when you're selling records and you're popular. It's not a good formula when you're not as successful, because then the articles strictly become about the grudge.
Yeah.
But in my Chicago-esque thinking, I wanted to ride that ship all the way to the bottom, and I did.
You knew that there was that risk, and you were willing to go there. You're willing to say, man, if I'm going to go out, it's going to be let's crash and burn this. Let's go.
Absolutely. Yeah. why do people still wish or fantasize that Tupac's alive, or who's the other guy, Jim Morrison? Why is that? Because they don't want to let go of the character. The character of Billy was really good for business.
Yeah. Was it good for William?
No, it's a terrible idea. That's the funny part.
That's what I'm getting to.
Yeah, it's a terrible idea. But it was also born of its time, and it was born of my youth and born of my insecurity. And I don't think I would have survived it. I probably would have jumped off a cliff somewhere along the way. So I'm not excusing it.
That's huge.
So what I'm trying to say in my own selfish way is these were the things that I did to get from point A to point B. At least I'm still here to talk about it, because I don't think I would have survived it. Look, and I say this like I'm going to use the same qualifier. To anybody who wishes that somebody like me appreciates success, I absolutely do. I'm super blessed. So what I'm about to say is no mark against that. The act of being a public person in this culture, in American culture, over the last 30 years, is a absolutely crazy, traumatizing thing. No one is psychologically or physically prepared as a human machine to deal with that level of weirdness. And by the way, it's only gotten weirder in the last 30 years. And if you're a sensitive person like I am, of course you can't deal with that. So that's not an excuse. It's just the way it is. And so what most people do is they fall into sociopathy. They create a false sense of self. They create a false sense of grandeur. And then eventually they fall off that cliff when people stop caring. I dealt with those things in public in my 20s, inverted the process. It almost killed me. I survived it, and now I'm on the other side, and I think it's kind of funny, and I'm happy.
One of the songs that really stood out to me, and you might consider this to be one of those beautiful, meandering, weird little songs, I hope not, is Dulcet Knee. And what I love about that song is that it's essentially, for me, if you strip away all of the beautiful sonic accoutrement, it's a country song. That's what I hear. I just hear it as a beautiful country lullaby song. Firstly, who's doing BVs on it? It's
Katie Cole and Sierra Swan.
Okay.
Both have toured with us. Katie more often than Sierra, but they're basically friends, and it's like family business. You know, they come and just help. Katie did almost all the vocal arranging on the entire record. Just an incredible job.
Yeah, amazing, really amazing.
So she's an Australian-born singer-songwriter, lives in Nashville.
So she helped you with your melodic approach too. She was one of the people who helped you go into places vocally that I haven't heard you go for a while. I mean, what's really beautiful is that there's moments when you sweep very sharp vocally on some of these songs, almost an octave up, and it really catches. It's just like, wow.
Not to take anything away for Katie, but anything I sing is sort of my weird world. So Katie was basically reacting off of my weirdness, and anybody who knows music, that's hard to do, because I sing a lot of sevenths and ninths, and it's almost impossible to harmonize against that stuff.
So the idea of that song, and what I'm saying originally being it's sort of kind of a country song, and based on what we played on the playlist show a few months ago, is this whole kind of world of songs that we don't know about that have you sitting in your living room with an acoustic guitar and a 4-track or an 8-track or in your studio that haven't seen the light of day? Is there a country Corgan record?
I've actually been planning on doing something. I'm friends with Hillary Williams, who's Hank Jr.'s daughter and granddaughter of Hank Sr., and we're talking about doing a bluegrass band, possibly with a couple other people. Now, I really want to do bluegrass music. It's something in my heart that I hope to do soon.
Oh, I can't wait to hear that. I mean, I think that song is one of the standouts for me on the record, just in terms of the overall experience, listening to it.
There are people in my world, not the band, but business world, that don't get that song at all, the one you just said, Dulcet Knee. They not only fought me putting it on the record, they fought me putting it out early before the record came out.
Who in their right mind? And I think Mark's great, and you may not even be referring to him, but I think your management, dude, who in there? There is a trail of bodies behind you. I think they're the last management company to ever work with you. You've done everyone else. Who would possibly say no to you? Who's going to do that?
I'm not going to name names, but there are times I have to pull the I am Billy Corgan and this is my world card. Yeah, that is one of them. But that's a perfect example where I thought it was a great song. And you hand it in, and people start going, yeah, I don't really get it.
It's great to see the album is a triumph, man. And I'm sending you nothing but love.
Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, Billy. Bye.